Good afternoon and welcome to the latest Atta Webinar. Today's webinar is an update on Ndutu Safari Hi Rob, can you hear me?
I've got you now, Chris. I lost you for the last 15 seconds, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, we're ready to go, so over to you when you're ready.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris. Hello, everybody. Firstly, I just want to thank Atta and Chris for giving us the opportunity to present Ndutu Safari Lodge. For those who don't know me, I'm Kenyan born. I went to school and university in Australia where I did a medical degree. Was in the military for a period of time, peacekeeping and the special forces, and then came back to Africa by mistake and ended up staying. So my wife and I have made a life in Tanzania, firstly founding a conservation area close to the coast, and then more latterly guiding professionally with epic private journeys, and more latterly still having my own safari company and camps around the place, which is where I might know most of you from, before getting involved in Ndutu. And I guess people will probably ask why Ndutu for me, and the answer really is it's, you know, all the places that I've traveled in Africa and all the things that I've done, Ndutu kind of struck a chord with me. I fell in love with the area. It's just spectacularly beautiful and productive from a wildlife perspective. I was fascinated by the cultural wildlife interaction there, and I thought it had huge tourism potential. And I also fell in love with the two ladies who originally owned Ndutu. So over a period of time of taking guests there and getting involved in some management and administrative training, they gave me the opportunity to get involved, which I was very excited about. So in the last couple of years, Ndutu is under new ownership. Archer still is involved, but is trying to wind herself time to retire and relax. That's one of the reasons we wanted to reach out to the trade and just reinforce people that we're still around, that the lodge is not really changing with all the things that people love Ndutu for. And that we're keen to just carry on what is an extraordinarily rich heritage and legacy at Ndutu. So I guess just to introduce, for those people who don't know where Ndutu is, and I'm assuming I'm talking to people who have no knowledge, but I know a lot of you have a lot of knowledge. Ndutu Safari Lodge is in the Ngorongoro Conservation Area in Tanzania, but outside of the crater. So it's approximately a 6-hour drive or a 30-minute flight from Arusha via Karatu, via the crater rim, past Olduvai Gorge to Ndutu. It's just on the border of the southern Serengeti and is strategically located en route to the Serengeti via Nabi Hill Gate. So it's quite an interesting location at any of the time of the year, and I'll go into why I think that's the case. So why would people want to come to Ndutu Safari Lodge in the Ndutu area? The first point is that it really is an exceptional wildlife viewing area, and whether that's in the green, rainy migration season when the wildebeest are calving, or whether it's in the dry season when the wildebeest have moved on but the predators still remain. It's spectacularly beautiful. It's easy to access from Karatu. It's a very diverse landscape, and it really is an area that's been liked and people have found passionate been very enthusiastic, particularly a lot of famous filmmakers, travel writers, professional guides. People in the know have used Ndutu as a bit of a hub for the last 40 years. So what we're trying to do is just remind people of that heritage. As you know, when you have people like Jane Goodall and Hugo van Lawick tending to be in that area, it offers huge authenticity to the wildlife experience, to the potential research experience, and for those people who are just wanting to engage in the landscape and the wildlife. So I want to talk now about the two seasons. Most people will know Ndutu and will probably sell Ndutu during the migration season when the wildebeest are calving. As you all pretty much know, 1.5 to 2 million wildebeest, zebra, eland, gazelles, all congregate on those southern grasslands, the short grass plains of the southern Serengeti, starting around about the end of November through to March, depending on the rains, and with a peak of births of wildebeest around the middle of February. Obviously, that varies from year to year depending on the rains. So at that time of the year, it's a pretty spectacular experience to see those wildebeest and just the mass and the density of wildlife in the area. I want to highlight though, and this is something that's not really known, that that particular season extends to some extent. We see a massive peak in guests coming in February. But I actually tend to think that it's really quite a pleasant place to be with the same experience with less people. January before Christmas and after that peak in February, March into April is absolutely fantastic. In fact, we tend to see the people who are really in the know, the private guides, the professional photographers coming in April. The wildebeest tend to still be around, but all the camps, the mobile camps, they're in the area until the end of March and have moved out. So it's much quieter and we tend to have the place ourselves, and it gives a much more exclusive experience. And I'll talk to that in a little bit more detail later on. I'll talk more about what is effectively Africa's high season, but in Ndutu's case, because our seasons are counter-cyclical, everybody's heading towards the migration in the north. I find the Serengeti marketing at the moment and the market tends to be very migration orientated, which is understandable but unfortunate. But people actually, I'm told, that people think that nothing's really going on in that area during the dry season. Granted, it is dry, but the reality is the wildebeest move out, the fresh water keeps the predators there, particularly the lions and cheetah and other predators that have had their young in the marshes. They're not going to follow the wildebeest. So we currently have an enormous range of good predator sightings during the dry season, from the end of the migration in April to the beginning of December. We have over 50 resident lions. We know them all by name. We know their family histories. We can explain that to clients. We have a lot of people that follow them passionately. We heavily supported and we're big supporters of the Kope Lion Project, which is a lion guardian project looking at the whole issue around lion corridors between the Serengeti and the Ngorongoro Crater, and the whole issues around human-wildlife conflict. And it's very enjoyable to see the research that they do into the lions of the Ndutu area. What I'm trying to present in this particular graph, we did an interesting study over the last 12 months. We asked clients and driver guides and anybody that came to the reception desk whether they'd seen a particular list of animals for that day. If they'd seen it, they just said yes. If they hadn't seen it, they said no. And we just ticked whether any animal had been seen by our group of guests on that particular day. So this graph really shows the similarities between what we see during the high season, the green season, the migration season, calving season between December and April, and the dry season, the traditional high season, where people tend to go into the northern Serengeti, which is reflected in the beige bars. And if you look at the comparison between the two seasons for the predators, the lions, cheetahs, spotted hyenas, striped hyenas, leopards, jackal, you can see in actual fact we tend to have way better sightings during the dry season. So if anybody is a predator freak, then it's a great time to come to Ndutu. So why I think that's important is we see during our dry season, we see a big difference between our client base. During the migration calving season, we're seeing regular clients, your clients coming through for 3 to 4 nights at a time, watching the wildebeest give their calves and the predators attacking those calves. During the dry season, from about May onwards, we tend to see people coming through for one-night stays, where they're transiting through to the Serengeti. And we don't have a problem with that. We just think they're missing a treat, in that they're missing an experience where there's very little going on in the area. We don't have the same volume of camps. They've all moved north. We don't have the same volume of clients. And we definitely see a trend to people wanting to use us more as a transit spot as opposed to the central Serengeti, given that the central Serengeti sightings get very, very busy, where you have 30 cars on a lion, which really contrasts to the experiences where you can potentially have a sighting all by yourself for a number of hours if you choose. Certainly with cheetah sightings on plains and things, you can potentially be sitting with a cheetah waiting for it to hunt for as long as you choose and not see another car. So I think the quality, the experience, and the nature, the fact that you get to see these predators during a dry season is a really good argument to consider staying an extra period of time in Ndutu on your way through to the north if people are desperate to see the wildebeest crossing the rivers in the north. So I want to talk a little bit about the lodge in general quickly. It was established in 1968 by a gentleman called George Dove. Since then, they've had some really, really interesting and very famous people who've used it as a base. The present owners, Archer Gatsma and Margaret Kulunda, who's Margaret Gibbs of Gibbs Farm fame, have done an amazing job in developing a business during some tough times in Tanzania. It's an incredibly powerful lodge in the fact that it's extremely well maintained. They've done a wonderful job with the staff. The staff are very, very loyal. We lose very few staff. They're extremely dedicated to the job. It's a very simple, traditional African lodge, and traditional in all manners. It's stone and thatched cottages with a private veranda. By today's standards, the rooms are probably smaller than some of the larger luxury tents, but they're comfortable and clean. The beds are very comfortable. The linens are nice, and it's really is simple. It is really authentic, and it's very good value for money. We've made a lot of effort in improving our menus and our food offerings. Some of you may or may not know Marita Wenzel, who's worked at Londolozi in Bayo, has spent 2 years with our local chefs, working with them. We've been very conscious of trying to keep Ndutu at a very reasonable price point. We've had some few challenges with concession fees similarly with all the lodges in the NCAA, but we haven't altered our rates and have no intention to do so in the near future. I think the most important thing to remember about Ndutu is just it really is a meeting place for friends. We have a lot of repeat clients who come back year on year on year, some people for 30 years. We have a lot of people who come there to meet their scientific cohorts and colleagues. We have a lot of professional photographers who come back regularly. It's just important that people understand it actually feels very homely in its respect. I think that lends itself to the fact that it's not a corporately owned lodge. It's not part of a chain. It's owned by people who live it and breathe it and feel very passionate about the area, the wildlife, and the people that come to visit. And of course, anybody that's ever been there love the resident Janets. So to the lodge itself, if you haven't managed to get a chance to be there, we'd obviously like to welcome you and show you around. But in this short period, let me just flash through a couple of quick pictures for you. This is the entrance to the lodge. As you can see, it's very traditional. I have to say, really interesting alternative during the migration season. It's migration calving season and the wildebeest follow the rain. So often it is wet and muddy. So for those people who really don't want to spend time in a tent during the rainy season, it offers a good alternative. And we see a lot of people who just can't see themselves in that environment, in those environmental conditions, who choose to come to Ndutu. The band, as we call them, the cottages are lined out either side of the central bar and dining area, looking towards Lake Ndutu. I wouldn't say it's on Lake Ndutu, but it's looking towards Lake Ndutu. You can see it. You can certainly hear the flamingos in the morning and the evenings, and you can certainly hear the wildebeest when they cross that lake, when they do their southern crossings. The rooms, the central dining, the bar area is open, looks out onto a view which I guess is the quintessential African savanna, East African view of acacia trees and open grassland. And I think, you know, if you're landing in Africa, when you look at that view, that's pretty much what your mind's eye has told you Africa looks like if you've never been there before. Our dining area is just next door to the bar and sitting area. Most of our produce is freshly produced from organic farms in Karatu. We like to offer a big range of alternatives to people with dietary requirements, like everybody has to these days. Our chefs are getting very creative, which is fun. They're starting to get very confident in trying new ideas. So firstly, we have a lot of fresh stuff made from our local ingredients from the local areas. This is our bar area. It's a meeting place for many, many people. Lots of very interesting stories and of times gone by and times to be had have been had at this bar. If not the bar, the campfire that's always lit in front of the lodge every single night under the stars. The rooms, as I said, are very traditional, very simple, very clean, very there's nothing fancy about them, but they are what you see is what you get. They're warm, no air conditioning required. We're at 5,000 feet, and you're definitely safe from insects and bugs if that's a concern for your clients, and certainly from the elements if that's a concern for your clients. Each of the cottages has a private sitting area out the front looking onto the view, and I have to say, you know, there's a lot going on in front of the lodge. We have some people that come on safari year on year and sit there for a month and actually don't go on game drives, and they often see more than the people going out and driving around. It's a wonderful place to have open set meals, so whenever we can and the weather allows, we'll try and eat outside. It's a little bit difficult during the migration season because the weather is so inconsistent, but during the drier months, this is something that we like to do, and certainly just love just being under the big African skies. So that's Ndutu in a nutshell. Really, it's the little things. We have people that come back for these little guys, the fishers' lovebirds, in the waterhole just outside the breakfast dining area every year. Even the owner, Archer, I've sat with her there for many months, and she's still taking photos of these guys after living at the lodge for 30 years. So it's not just the big animals, but some of the little things that people come to Ndutu for. That's pretty much all I have to say. Just one last thing before I hand over to Chris to handle any questions. as we indicated through our social media and our media alerts, our website online booking availability is now online. So hopefully that'll help you speed up your booking process for you. We'd love to get any feedback that you have on that, anything we can improve. Likewise, we'd love any feedback. It's nice as a newer owner of the lodge to hear from the trade as to what we can do to improve things for your clients. So we welcome that. It's always nice. Please feel free to contact me about anything. I'm very happy to talk to any of you, give you a call, hear your comments, hear your recommendations, and help you in any way. So, Chris, thanks very much for the opportunity, and thank you all for taking the time to listen to the presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Well, Rob, thank you very much on a wonderful presentation on what is clearly a very special property with an absolutely fascinating history. If anyone does have any questions, please do type those away into the chat box, and I will pose those through to Rob. So first questions come through from Tracy Campbell. Do the rooms have aircon?
Tracy, no, the rooms don't have aircon, and the reason being is really just where the lodge is, both in terms of the environment. We're at 5,000 feet, so it really does not get hot. The rooms are made of stone, so they're well insulated. So even in the heat of the day, if you're in your room, there's absolutely no requirement for air conditioning. And in all the time I've been there, and I asked Archer, the previous owner, have they ever had a complaint of something being hot in the lodge? And it's just hasn't happened. So it's a very, very nice environment to be in. It's a dry, there's no humidity, and so air cons are not really required.
Okay, great, thank you. Another question comes through from Dickie Ashcroft. What are your elephant sightings like in the drier months?
Yeah, good question, Dickie. So we tend to, during the rainy season, we don't tend to see so many elephants for two reasons, I think. One is obviously there's a lot of water and food around in a much more dispersed area, and also there's a lot of movement of vehicles around Ndutu during that migration calving period. So during the dry season, we start to see a big movement of elephants coming into the area. And so because the marshes, those freshwater marshes, are an absolute magnet for the herbivores, we see a lot of elephant in the woodland. So I would say almost a daily sighting, not a daily sighting, between April, May, through to when the rains come, well after, until the wildebeest come almost. But we often see elephants during the wet season, but almost a daily sighting during the dry season.
Okay, that's wonderful. Another question in from Fiona Herring. Is there an age restriction?
Fiona, no age restrictions. We're happy to take any children. What's important to stress to your clients is we're not fenced, and we do allow, I guess it's a perceived, it looks safe because we have a campfire without a boma around it, looking straight out onto the trees. And we do have visitors at night to the campfire. We've had lions sloping at the bird bath where this lovely picture of the Fisher's Lovebirds are, which is like 15 meters from the campfire. We often see leopards in the light. So when you do bring children, we just ask you to really keep them on a relatively short leash particularly in the evenings. But we'll happily take any age kids.
And a couple more questions coming in, which is fantastic. One from Richard Wendy. Is Nabi Hill the only entrance gate into the Serengeti, or is there another entrance close to Ndutu, and can you go in if you wanted to from Ndutu as a day trip?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, Richard, it's a moving feast because we keep getting different rulings from Serengeti. So you can actually get into the Serengeti in 3 directions, and I say that because practically you can go You can go into the Serengeti via Kusini and towards Moro. That is one option. And to do that, you can check out at the Ndutu Tanapa Ranger Post. You can also go if you want. You can go. The only other option really is via Nabi Hill. So, and to get to Nabi Hill, you can go effectively two ways. So, yeah. So there are. If what you need to do if you want to check on that, it's really important to talk to your ground handler, express what you want to do, and try and get an opinion from your ground handler as to what's possible at that particular time, because sometimes they change their mind. It's Tanzania after all.
Of course. Few more questions. They keep coming in, which is wonderful. From Soraya Phillips, do you cater for kosher and halal guests?
Yes, we do. So obviously we take as much advice from you regarding your clients as possible. But yes, we have done for both. We just need to make sure that they're specific as to their, some people are, how do I say this, are very strict on their requirements, and some are not. So it's really important to get an understanding of their what level of specifications they're looking for. But we've definitely done it in the past. Yeah.
Dickie Ashcroft's also asking if the rooms have been renovated in terms of minor aesthetics, obviously since he's been there before.
Yeah, Dickie, well done for noticing. Most men, it would go past them, I guess, and I'm one of those men. But yes, we've done it. We've done what we call a minor refurb. One of the challenges Ndutu has is trying to be true to the legacy and not changing Ndutu, and trying to keep the things that we really, really make Ndutu great. But there's some things that we want to change that are not going to really affect people too much. So we've done a couple of things. We have painted. We will be putting new linens into the dining area and sitting area. We've changed the types of mosquito nets in the rooms to much more all-encompassing. We've raised the ceilings in the rooms. Obviously, we're limited by the way we can increase the size of the rooms without a major capital works. So we raised the ceilings, which gave them a feeling of more space. We've painted the rooms as well. We're experimenting with changing the bathrooms to make them look more contemporary. So there's a few little things that we can do with relatively low cost, which I think will contemporize the lodge without taking away those things that have traditionally made it attractive to people.
And we have one more on rooms from James Balfour. Do you have family rooms?
Hi James, hope all's good with you. Yeah, we do. Right now we've got a couple of ways we can do this. We actually have a triple room, so it could be two adults and a child. We're right now in the process of actually joining two separate twin rooms to make a family room. And we haven't put it in our rate sheet, but we also have a villa, which was one of the management villas that we can use if we come to an agreement. We don't sell it en masse because I think it requires specific explanations to the agents to understand the families, and also to talk about why we might want to do that. But that villa it's a management room slightly behind the lodge, but it does give a family privacy, and it has a double bed in the room and a twin, and you can conceivably put another two people in if they wanted to. So that we definitely can cater for families.
That's great, and I think these last two questions will be the final two. So from Daniela Elitz-Kobe, how's the traffic at Ndutu nowadays during migration season? She's always a bit reluctant to sell Ndutu due to big numbers of camps in the area.
Daniela, okay, it's a fair comment, and obviously we're part of the problem because we're some of that traffic. But you're right. In February is not not something that, as a conservation person, I'm very comfortable with. There is just too many camps in the area that probably shouldn't have been allowed, but that's another story. How I get around that and how I like to explain that to people is to suggest coming outside of February. Make sure your clients come in January, Christmas, or March into early April. The camps leave the area at the end of March so they can pre-position themselves in the central Serengeti or the north for the crossings in the north. So by the end of March, it is absolute luxury. You have exactly the same experience with none of the 32 mobile camps.
That's wonderful. And finally, could clients do the ISE Cultural Village from the lodge?
Soraya, it's a long way. It's not something you could potentially do in a day, but it could be a nice circuit, and I can certainly recommend it would complement doing Ndutu very, very well. But it would be something that you'd have to overnight either in Eyasi or Karatu and then carry on to Ndutu, but bundling it together would be very nice. Chris, there's one more thing I'd like to mention that is on the cards. We're actually working on a Maasai cultural experience at the moment. I don't want to give too much away about it because it's sensitive, and we want to make sure that it's going to be something that maintains its integrity because it's amazing. So we're working very closely with the Maasai community and the NCAA to make sure we get this right and it doesn't degrade like some of the other cultural experiences that some of us may be aware of in the NCAA. So once we have that right and the codes of conducts in place and we're able to understand it better, then we'll be talking to the trade about it. But, to answer Soraya's question, not in a day trip, but certainly as part of an itinerary, it would make a wonderful combination.
Okay, Soraya's just snuck one last one in, and then we are going to wrap up. Is the balloon safari possible from the property?
Soraya, yes, it is. In the previous seasons, the balloon safaris from Serengeti Balloon have been mounted out of the Serengeti. But they're willing to come to Ndutu Lodge to pick clients up. And what it requires is you to buy a Serengeti permit for the day to be able to do the balloon safari. Just to put a little teaser on that, Serengeti Balloon Safaris has just got a concession to operate balloons in the NCAA, and we've been having discussions with them as to potentially hosting one of their guys at the lodge to sell balloon safaris, not only through the high season, but also potentially through the dry season if the demand warrants it. So if the trade sees a demand for that, we'll continue to talk to John Course and his team as to how we can make that work.
That's fantastic, and thank you, Soraya, for sneaking that question in. So we're going to wrap up now. Thank you all very much for listening and for taking the time out of your undoubtedly busy days to take a listen to the presentation. As I said at the beginning, the recording is going to be available. It will be distributed to everyone who attended, and it will also be posted up onto the Atta website. So Rob, thank you very much for your time. Great presentation. Great to have so many questions. And I look forward to having some of you on another Atta webinar sometime in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody.